Welcome to Paul's Heart. I'm Paul, author of the book Paul's Heart, Life as a Dad and a 35-Year Cancer Survivor, available on Amazon. You can also find me on YouTube on the channel at Paul's Heart, PaulsHeart. Make sure you find your way over there and subscribe to my YouTube channel in the event anything happens with my TikTok page. Previously, I've talked about that magic 5-year mark that cancer survivors get told about when they're told that basically they can expect to be cancer-free once and for all, that the risk of anything coming back is very low. Not impossible, but very low. So once we hit that 5-year mark, many of us, myself included, find themselves released by their oncologist. That's all we want. Never to see a doctor again about the cancer. It's behind us. I never want to see another doctor again. But in reality, you really should continue to be followed up, and not for the cancer. You see, if you remember, or if you're recently starting to go through your treatments, you're told about potential late side effects. Now, in 1988 and 1989, I wasn't. I've looked through my documentation and I can find 2 so-called potential issues, that being a secondary cancer such as leukemia or something called pericarditis, which is basically an inflammation of the heart. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole health history of me as a survivor, but let's just say they were really wrong. But over the decades, medicine has become aware of potential health issues that cancer survivors can develop. Not will, but can. And the important thing is to be followed up by your primary care doctor, who needs to be made aware of by your oncologist the potential risks from the treatment that you received. Again, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be dealing with any kind of late side effects. But if you end up having to deal with them, you want to find out about them before it's too late. In other words, if you have one of the drugs that you get through chemotherapy can have an impact on the heart, you should have a baseline heart study done when you're completed with your chemotherapy. And hopefully the news is good, that you don't have anything wrong with your heart and you just go on your merry way. Another study maybe being done 5-10 years later. But if the study reveals that there may be some damage developing, they need to follow you up sooner than that. Maybe 2-3 years, and do another study and compare them to see if the damage is getting worse, if it's staying the same, whatever. But it's important to have a doctor involved in your follow-up care beyond that 5 years. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to personally relate to you what happened to me, how I found this out. Again, not something my doctors were aware of back in 1988, 1989, and 1990. So they didn't know to look for this stuff. Now, I mention everything in the book. I was 42 years old. At that point, I was 18 years in remission. And so that would be 13 years after that 5-year mark. I hadn't seen any doctor in those 13 years because my oncologist said I was done. I didn't need to be seen anymore. And really, I'm the kind of individual that doesn't notice symptoms really that easily. But in the winter of January 2008, I noticed a symptom that I was having. Of course, I ignored it. And it continued on for about 3.5 months before I finally made a phone call. Between shoveling snow during the winter and going to the gym and any physical activity that I was having at work, which I had a very physical job at the time, I developed a chest tightness all across my left shoulder to my breastbone. Now, it was only temporary. It lasted less than a minute, usually. And then I would just go about my business. In the gym, I would get on that elliptical, start pedaling away, and sure enough, I'd get that tightness. And after about a minute, it would go away. And I would continue for a full hour on that elliptical and then head over to the gym. One day, I called up my family physician, who I really only saw once a year for a seasonal allergy shot, and I described the symptoms that I was having. No big deal, because I don't call her with problems all the time. She knew that for me to call, this pain, this tightness was really bothering me. And I described it basically as the sensation you get with a side sticker. You know, if you run out in the cold and, eventually it will go away. She ordered a nuclear stress test on me. Now, just as I mentioned, I had no idea what an oncologist was when I was first diagnosed with cancer. I had no idea what a nuclear stress test was for. All I was told was to show up in sweats or shorts because I'd be going on a treadmill. And again, I knew nothing that was going on. So the test was actually scheduled by her. She had it done for me in like 3 days. And this was in the middle of April. I got an IV put in my arm for them to inject a radioactive isotope into my veins, which would light up my heart. Again, I still have no idea what's going on. I got back to the lab where they placed electrodes all over my chest, even some on my legs, and then proceeded to have me walk on a treadmill. Now, of course, the thing that I knew was going to happen, I'm going to get that chest tightness. So we'll obviously get an answer. And after about 3 minutes, they increased the speed, they increased the incline a little bit, and then the chest tightness hit. And before I could even say that, one of the technicians reading the monitor said, "Stop the test." They didn't say much other than they saw something on the EKG. They had me get off the treadmill and then go back to the lab where they put the IV into me, injected more radioactive isotope into me, and then had me go back onto the x-ray table and took more pictures of my heart. Then they took the IV out and had me sit in the lobby. And at that point, I watched everybody leave that came in after me. At that point, I knew something wasn't right. I still had no idea. So I'm going to make a second part to this video because I see that I'm running out of time, and it is a little bit more to this story. So at this point, I'm going to conclude part 1. Make sure you follow me on to part 2. Until next time.